Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book from Jordan Publishing Limited. It's an excellent book, another one in their series. This one's on corporate borrowing. It's the law and practice of corporate borrowing in a 5th edition, and it's been written by Geoffrey Fuller. The book is a first-class statement of where the law is at the moment, as to be expected. We're very grateful to Jordans for continuing through LexisNexis to publish these books. Elizabeth and I talked about this book in some detail because it's an interesting book. It's over here, we'll just look at it in a minute. We've given it just for a bit of amusement for our review title, Corporate Borrowing, not borrowing, Corporate Borrowing, question mark. This book casts an expert and analytical eye in a new 5th edition. And I think it's quite important. You'll understand why we've got that title in a few minutes. Let's just have a look at the book. Red cover. There we go. That's the front, and there's the spine. It's a hardback. There's nothing on the back. Now, in the back, right at the back, the actual ISBN is there with the little barcode. We do actually have right at the back, when I get to it, the index, and the index is done by paragraph numbering. You can see there, page 378, so it's under 400 pages. It's quite a detailed index, very useful, very much the house style for Jordans again, of course. Now we've got here right at the end, corporate borrowing law and practice. You can see a lot of footnoting at the back, and you can see paragraph numbering, of course, very openly noticeable. Now you've got there some front page information, then you've got a little bit of detail there, and then you've got the dedication, which I always like to mention. Then there's a preface, which is well worth reading. You get an idea of what Geoffrey Fuller's looking at the moment concerning the changes. His preface is dated February 2016. There's the contents section there. We'll run through a lot of information, which I think many of you will be quite familiar with from company law, or whatever you want to call it these days. It's called corporate governance by some people, but it's still company law in many ways. There's the information looking specifically at it. Then finally, it's a detailed index. Then we have the table of cases after that, and then after a lot of table of cases, in fact. And then after that, we've got statutes, of course. Then there is, in addition to that, a very small amount of statutory instruments. Then you've got the European materials. Now, I'm mentioning this now because even though we're leaving the EU, the European materials will be relevant, the directives will be relevant for a long time to come, in my opinion. So therefore, don't underestimate the need to refer to these directives. I am hoping, notwithstanding what has happened, that we will be able to keep some of this excellent information we have received from Europe by way of directives for the future. So even though we're leaving, there'll be something that will be helpful for our substantive law. Now, this is chapter 1, the nature of borrowings. And you can see how it's structured. You've got a paragraph numbering, and then you've got detailed footnotes there. Loan capital, it starts off with loans, all of the very, very basics. And it goes on from that to importance of distinctions, the debt versus equity, and so forth. And we then get into the words which are used when it comes to corporate borrowing. There's the book itself. Now let's talk about what we think about it. Elizabeth and I did have a nice chat about the book. And this is basically what we've said. What a useful book this is for corporate lawyers, especially those involved with any aspect of financial services, which is really what this book is aimed at. Anyone interested in how corporate finance really works, and when not, and why not, they should read it. It's now in a new 5th edition from Jordan, and it's been written with commendable clarity by Geoffrey Fuller, and it can help you affirm and confirm your own understanding of the literally dozens or hundreds of financial instruments and processes which are available. It can certainly assist in augmenting your knowledge of the language of finance, and I think it's very handy if you happen to find yourself sitting at a corporate client's boardroom table with the company finance director squinting at you. It's important to note that there is a whole chapter devoted to key commercial terms, which I again think will be interesting. We have specialised and we have become very complex in much of what we do, so this will be of help. And for lawyers toiling in the corporate sector where familiarity with terminology is an asset, we think this authoritative volume is nothing if not a confidence booster, so you can lovingly hug it just before you go into your meeting. Now, the very title of the book, Corporate Borrowing, brings to mind the "neither a borrower nor a lender be" speech uttered by Polonius in Hamlet. It is fiction, of course. And sure enough, when you turn to chapter 1 on the nature of borrowings, there it is, with the next 2 lines providing further food for thought. For loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. Well, you know, Polonius, he was pretty spot on some things. It sounds like Shakespeare must have had personal borrowings in mind rather than that of the corporate variety, which is the subject of this book. But there again, Shakespeare is so special that he always seems to be able to put his finger on the nub of the issue. And again, why is it we refer to Polonius? Mainly because it makes sense even in 2016, some 400 years after Shakespeare's death. Now, the author of this book, Geoffrey Fuller, is a partner at Allen & Overy, and he both states and implies that the essential tools of corporate finance are not getting and spending, but lending and borrowing. Borrowing, he says, is an essential feature of responsible financial management, adding that if a company borrows too little, it may not have enough money for capital investment or working capital. And of course, borrowing too much, however, saddles the company with a burdensome amount of interest. Of course, it's always the key to know exactly how much, when you do your sums, you actually need to get. And that's actually the same with your personal finances as well, if you think about it. But we are talking here about corporate. What is particularly interesting about the book is that it is based on the author's expressed intention to produce an unashamedly legal book, which is also intended for the interested layman, and also, I would add, anybody in finance. It covers not just the law, says the author, but also market practice, linking the two together as far as possible. Here the reader will find every important aspect of corporate borrowing covered, from the nature and types of borrowings, for example, through to the role of trustees, attracting lenders, the execution of documents, and much more besides, including a chapter on US securities and tax laws, which I found particularly helpful. You can see where that is in the book itself. Now, it's a long-established and highly regarded work of reference now. It's fortunately easy to use, with a detailed table of contents and an index, as well as a massive amount of footnoting, numbered paragraphs throughout, and extensive tables of cases, statutes, SIs, and the European material, which I've mentioned, including directive references. And of course, do bear in mind it's all paragraph numbered when you look at the index. Let me say finally that this new 5th edition has completely updated itself from the 4th edition to reflect case law and changes in market practice. It is therefore an essential purchase for practitioners and indeed all interested readers who will appreciate the clarity with which the intricacies of corporate borrowing are explained. And the law is as stated at the 1st of January 2015, even though the actual preface itself is written in February, which you can see there. As I said, there's the actual content section again, and I did find it very interesting to see how the information is set out. And chapter 14 deals specifically with US and tax laws, which I think is directly relevant. Obviously, we're in a different era with Brexit, and I'm not sure how soon a new edition of this will come out. But you can see, just opening it in the middle of the book, you've got detailed footnoting, as I say, and you've got the paragraph numbering. I'm very pleased with it, and I'd like to thank Geoffrey Fuller and his colleagues very much indeed for producing this work. As I said before, we can't do our jobs really without having these excellent publications from Jordan's, so thank you to all concerned for keeping us so well informed. We appreciate it. Bye-bye.